Is it? What's the phrase?
Coming in hot.
On 2 wheels? Yeah. Coming in on 2
Yeah.
wheels.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so, like, talking about all the craziness that's been going on, we were in the animal hospital last night with the new
Oh,
puppy.
no.
Everything's fine.
Ah,
She, like, threw up a couple times in, like, a
oh,
short
man.
amount of time, and it kinda, like, made some weird gagging noises. We're like, "What's going on?" And it
Yeah.
just nobody knows at the end of the day. They gave her fluids and a little anti-nausea medicine. She must have gotten it all out of her system, but, like,
Shoot.
you always have to assume the worst where it's like, "What did you
Yeah.
put in your mouth, and how are we gonna find out what that is?" But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, she just kinda, like, recovered this morning, and we never knew what it was.
Um, Peanut got sick a while back.
Mhm.
I won't go into detail. It's
Yeah.
disgusting. But let's just say this. Henry had to take pictures of his bottom and send it
Oh,
to
yeah.
me.
Nice.
And, it was like one of those things where it was like, did he eat something that now is, like, tearing up his
Oh, yeah.
intestines?
Ugh.
And so, yeah, that was, like, a hot mess trying to figure all that stuff out. And then trying to pay for X-rays, like, who knows what he ate? There's
I'm so glad it didn't
so
come to that
dumb.
last night. I'm just like,
Uh,
"No, we've had this dog for, like, a couple weeks. Like,
yeah.
don't tell me we're already gonna go through that."
Well
But I
well,
guess, like, that's what
our
you get with a
story with
puppy.
Peanut. Yeah, our story with Peanut. So, we have Peanut, who's a King Charles Cavalier, and
Mhm.
then Pepper is a Greyhound. Pepper does not know how to play with dogs. She's worked her life until she
Right.
came to live with us. And so, like, getting Peanut was good because it was like, "Oh, this is how dogs supposed to behave." So and for a while, she was, like, really snobby about him being around, and then it was like, "Oh, okay, I'll play with you." And then, like, we Henry watched it happen. She playfully swatted at Peanut, but it was enough to knock his hip out of socket. So, I'm so embarrassed to say that we paid
Oh
for
my
hip
god.
surgery for a dog because kinda like you were talking about, we had him for maybe 9 months, and it was like, do you it's just hard to put a dog down just because it's, like like, came out
No,
of
yeah,
socket and won't
no.
pop back in.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
anyways,
that's
the
wild.
funny part in all this is we definitely opted for the cheapest surgery, which just meant that they sawed off the hip bone. Um, and so now and then you just have scar tissue kind of fill in.
Uh-huh,
Every
uh-huh.
once in a while, he'll be running around, and then all of a sudden his leg just, like, flops around, and you're like, "Oh, that's not natural."
Do you have to do anything to, like, fix it, or is it just
No,
oh
it's
my
fine,
god.
and they said, like, he probably has 80, 90, 80% mobility that he normally
Sure.
would have. So, I mean, he can still jump on the couch and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it was weird. They were telling us that we shouldn't let our puppy, like, do stairs or jump on the couch because it just, like, saves their hips for later on. But I'm like, that is so impossible to prevent. Like, this thing goes 1,000 miles an hour, and she just wants to be everywhere you are. We do our best to pick her up and put her down, but, like, half the time she's in her own world, flying
Uh-huh.
around, jumping where she needs to go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Sorry, behind the scenes, I was gonna tweet about this.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And notice, so I'll shout this out too. James, Becca, Brad, and I will be on Front End Nation in June.
I'm looking forward to
So,
that.
yeah,
That
it'll be
panel
fun.
sounds like a lot of fun.
Okay.
To be
Um,
specific, June 4th through 6th
thank you.
is when the
And it's
conference
a
is.
virtual conference, and everybody should
Yeah.
check it out because they really are trying to highlight all the different frameworks that are available. Um, and so what's neat about the compressed hosts is that we all kind of specialize in different ones. Like, I think we're all familiar with all of them, but like, I'm on the Redwood JS core team, and Brad loves Remix, and James loves Astro. I don't know what Camp Becca fits in. Everything else.
That's a good question, yeah.
Anyways,
I
but
have, like, let's see, I've got Remix experience, Next experience, limited Astro experience. I have, like, almost no Redwood experience. I think I went through, like, the
oh,
intro, like, once, and
yeah,
I was
the
like, "Okay, yeah,
tutorial.
yeah, we put all the pieces together, makes
Yeah.
sense." but then never kept going with it. Mostly because I think I had an aversion to GraphQL at some
Mm.
point, and it was
Yeah,
back when that was like the case.
that's
So
most people's turn off.
yeah,
It's a thing, but, with the new Redwood, you're not tied to GraphQL, so
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
Luke Cart, what's up?
things change so fast. Like
Yeah. A few of my favorite things. Sorry, chat, I'm just sending out a quick tweet to let people know that we are live. There we go.
I
Cool.
shared the front end nation tweet.
Oh, good, good, good. Yeah, so it's a virtual conference and you guys should come by. Speaking of Redwood, I do have on my list of things to do this week to submit a CFP because it's still open until April 30th. So I want to give a Redwood specific talk.
That's cool. I need to get my act together and do a talk here somewhere soon. I think it's going to be about like the remix blog situation, how I just changed everything over
Mm.
to Vite and then leveraged the Vite glob imports to kind of like glob up all your markdown posts,
Mm-hmm.
so you can kind of like, you don't have to like read from the file system anymore. It kind of does
Mm-hmm.
it at build time. But
Yep.
I'm finding like lots of edge cases that's making this not work. Now my bundle size is too big to deploy to a worker's environment. So I'm like, oh my God, like I think I'm just scaling out of like static file based stuff. Like I think I have to go use a database very soon if I want to keep this going and keep posting and being able to manage it all.
Well, that's funny that you say that. So we are in the process of dog fooding our documentation,
Yeah.
which dog fooding is just a funny word anyways. It's not like we're dogs. But we are right now it's on DocuSource. So we're moving it all over to Redwood and building it on a RSC SSR project. So
Sweet.
actually a blog post went up yesterday where one of our core team members, actually co-founder, Rob, wrote about getting Markdown all like so let me back up for a second. All of our documentation right now is in the Redwood proper repo, as it should be, because as you make commits, you want to document those things. You want documentation to be tied to issues and PRs. So all the documentation will stay there. Then we have a separate repo, and I believe this is how Remix has it set up as well. Have a separate repo that then sucks up all of the markdown files from a different repo and pulls it and displays it. So anyways, the blog post explains kind of how he was able to accomplish that with Redwood. And we have a working project available or demo up now that you can go check out. So there's still a few gotchas just in where we are with the process of implementing RSC and SSR. So for example, if you click on nav items, you'll see a white flash where basically the entire page refreshes. So eventually the layout should be locked in and only the pieces that change will be swapped out. So
Whoa, I want to dig into this. I don't know if I want to say it for
tough
the actual
times.
show or not, but like I'm reading this and it's like this is the point in the blog post that really gets me like I don't know, gets me perked up. It says no pre-converted markdown to HTML stored anywhere. So all
That's
these
right.
transformations are happening dynamically. No content stored in a database. Okay, so it's
That's right.
all living either just in GitHub via the API you're querying. No pre-processing of docs files at build time. How?
So
How
read the
many
whole thing. I should have
Okay,
Rob
okay,
on because
okay.
Rob did a lot of the work. The other thing that's really interesting is we got MDX to work. And this is why MDX is interesting because MDX allows you to have client-side components right next to your Markdown. So Markdown is usually just for text formatting. And when you're talking about React server components, that's React that runs on the server. But when you have React components inside a Markdown file within MDX, you're talking about generally using state or event handlers, which have to run on the client. So Rob talks a little bit in his post about how we got that to work with the hosting and all that stuff. So yeah,
But
I
you
think it's a
okay,
good
you
point.
only have 3 blog posts, is that what I'm seeing?
No, so that's an error.
Okay, okay,
Hopefully
okay.
fix that today. So this is another interesting thing. So these are going to be like little snippets, right? Because we haven't even officially gone live. So I need to fix that. That's on my end with the querying. But this is
Okay.
the interesting thing about the Redwood blog. It is all hosted on Hashnode. We're using
Mhm,
headless Hashnode
mhm.
and to display all of it. So we don't have a content management system per se. We're running all that through Hashnode. And what's interesting, if you use headless Hashnode, it is running like GraphQL API on the back end. And
Mhm.
so, hey, Redwood supports GraphQL out of the box. And so that was like a natural pairing for us. So I've got to fix the query. It's on my list of things to do. There's several blog posts there. So, and the other one, if you're interested, there's a couple there for comparing Next.js, the app and pages API, Remix, and Redwood.js. So I have two, one comparing the router and one comparing fetching data.
Sweet. Okay, I have to read this whole thing to figure out how y'all did it performantly. I feel like I said, with the 80 some odd blog posts I have, I'm scaling out too much to pre-process anything or to process
Oh,
like my listing page at build time, and so I had to do a bunch of weird stuff. But then it
we
makes my
should be
bundle real
close to
big.
you on documentation stuff, though.
I feel
Like the
like it.
number of pages, if not
I feel like
more.
it's got to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll see. I'll dig into that. That's cool.
So Luke was asking, what does dog food mean? And I was going to look up the proper definition, but
I think
oh, go ahead.
I mean, just you're using the tools that you make yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say it
I was
means.
trying to think I was trying to look up where it came from.
Who knows? Yeah.
Uh, okay, here we go. I found it. I'm going to trust Gemini. So this is Google AI. Hold on just a second. Let me let my dog out of my office. Otherwise, he's going to.
Yeah, my puppy is actually barking at herself in the mirror in the
I
next
can't
room
hear
over.
it. I was like, he's going to be hitting the door in my office trying to get out the entire time. Okay, so the term comes from a 1976 dog food ad where the actor Lauren Green claimed to feed Alpo, the dog food, to his dog. And I guess maybe he didn't feed dog food, or maybe they actually did, but that's where that came from.
Okay.
So, but it's like that whole idea of practice what you preach. We're going to do it ourselves. And the good thing is that we've actually unveiled certain things about the framework that are not stellar for a developer experience. And so we've revisited aspects of the framework because of it. So we've talked before how there's a difference between framework development and then building on top of the framework. And so
Yeah.
building on top of the framework allows us to be our own users and experience things and say, oh, well, that's not obvious.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
has been a
it's
good
weird. It's like
experience.
Inception a little bit, but you have to use the product that you build for sure.
Yep. Yep.
I guess Atlassian dog food's Atlassian because we use Jira for all of our project management. We use Confluence for all of our knowledge base and documentation
Nice.
stuff. So we're always using our stuff, and we're always using like a beta branch of all of our stuff.
Oh, nice.
So new
So,
features roll out there
yep.
first. And we have a way to target that with feature flags that just says give this to Atlassian users and nobody else.
So and then you Bitbucket, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Bitbucket. That's probably the worst of the stack there, to be
Stepchild.
honest. Yeah. The rest of them, I really like Confluence. I don't really see the Jira hate. Like, it works for me,
Mm,
but we don't overcomplicate things. So yeah.
yeah. Well, and then, that could be a huge part of it. Let's go ahead and do the intro and we can get into it. I'm going to cue up the music, get that ready. There we go. Okay. Welcome to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web design and development with a little bit of zest. Today, we're going to be talking about developer FOMO, working with AI, and all the productivity hacks and setups that we have.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compressed.
Hello, my name is Amy Dutton, and I am a lead maintainer on the Redwood.js core team.
Hey, y'all. My name is Brad Garapi. I'm a front end developer at Atlassian working on Confluence.
Awesome. And today we have a fantastic sponsor with Postman. So Postman is perfect for working with REST APIs. They have a built-in VS Code extension that allows you to quickly and easily explore those APIs and work with those inside of your application. And James and I will actually be at their conference PostCon next week, live recording an episode. And I believe James is also giving a talk. So if you are in the San Francisco area, we'd love for you to stop by, say hi, and connect. And special thanks to Postman for being a Compressed FM sponsor.
Man, do you know whereabouts in the city it is? the conference?
I do not. I should know. I've been trying to juggle this one, and I'm also speaking at React Conf
Ooh,
in 3 weeks. Yeah. I'm sweating that one a little bit. So React Conf is the first React conference put on by Meta, and that one is in Las Vegas. So that one, there's quite a bit of prep involved and them just trying to make sure that everything is tight and programming is good. So that
yeah,
one's
I
fun.
would believe that they go through everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure
Yeah.
that you're presenting the best way possible.
That's right. So I have to, like, give my talk ahead of time to their
Yep,
team and get feedback on everything, and then, of course, do the I think the sound check, I'm just doing sound check, but maybe I'm running through everything again. Just trying to coordinate schedules with 30 speakers, and yeah, it'll be a big
yeah,
deal. Redwood is gonna have a booth there, so if you
cool.
do have tickets, I know tickets were based on a lottery, kinda hard to get one, but I would love to say hi. I will be at the Redwood booth. We are we have some fun giveaways planned.
Uh,
And they're all redwood themed, which is exciting.
hey, speaking of our first topic, which is FOMO, all these conferences going on lately, huge FOMO. Like I saw
Yeah,
everything from React Miami. It's like,
that one's
yeah, I
always a good
can't believe
one.
I missed that. It looked like a really, really good one.
Yeah, the other good one that I'm gonna miss is Render
Yep.
Atlanta. That'll be a really good one. I think James is gonna be there. I've wanted to go the last few years. It's just such a weird time because it's right as school is ending and my kids have all the school stuff. And it's like, out of all the conferences, this one would be the easiest to get to since I'm in Nashville. It's within
Yeah.
driving distance. But anyways, just can't make it work.
I think like my favorite conference that I ever went to was Reactathon in San Francisco.
Oh,
They had it
really?
at this outdoor amphitheater. It was
Oh, that's cool.
amazing. Scott and Wes were there. They did a live episode of Syntax.
Oh, fun.
Like a lot of big stuff was happening at the time in React. And so it just felt like really energetic, energized, and I got
Yeah.
to meet like a ton of people there.
Was, Chantastic there?
Yeah, I met
Okay.
Michael
I think
Chan.
I saw a replay of that talk that he gave because I remember it being in an amphitheater and being like, "Oh, that's a cool step."
But I think that was the one where he opened with burn all Jess snapshots with fire. And he talked about
Yeah.
storybook testing. Yeah.
Yes. So, let me just say, like, Michael Chan is one of the nicest human beings. When we did the Redwood JS conference, we wanted him to come, and scheduling-wise, it just didn't work out for him to come and talk about Storybook. And so they asked me to give the Storybook talk, and I reached out to him, and I was just like, "Hey, what features do you want me to cover? Like, how can I align with Chromatic's current marketing and stuff like that?" And he sent me all of his talks and, like, was like, "Here's all my slides, take whatever you want."
Nice.
Like, copy paste. But, it was just really helpful for having a starting point with a talk and trying to, again, align with Chromatic because they are a good partner with Redwood, and I'm a huge fan of Storybook.
Yeah. Although I think that's the thing of the past for him. He's starting
It
something new here
is.
soon.
He hasn't
He hasn't
announced
said
it,
what it
right?
is.
Okay.
He just showed a
And
color, like a blue
what's
color.
what's
It's a good
that?
teaser.
Meta?
People have guesses.
Oh, funny. Is it I need to see what specific shade of blue.
I think
Um,
somebody found it. Like they
oh,
checked
they
the
did.
hex code and then went to the website they thought it was and matched them. So
Oh,
the good
hilarious. That's
spies
awesome.
out there.
What wonderful, suspense. I've wanted to watch more of his, layoff logs, and he also had a video with Theo that I really wanna watch talking about the role of DevRel being dead.
Yeah, it's man. Okay, I guess we're just gonna just dive into this topic. Uh, Theo's an interesting character because for the longest time, I felt like it was kind of just like him on his pedestal and like no shade being thrown or anything, but he would do his streams, put out his videos, very opinion heavy, but very backed by years of experience, right? Because he can sit there, he can draw out all of his thoughts, clearly explain himself, cut that down. But I'm really happy to see him like talking to other folks in the community, because he's big enough where he gets a lot of crap, and so he could come across as controversial. But it's great now to see him having conversations with other people. Like I think James had a phone call with him. He did
Mhm.
a video with Chantastic, and it's like cool to see him interact with others in the community.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have only heard bits and pieces of things that they said during the video, so take all that with a grain of salt. I'll find it, I'll include it in the chat. But, my hot take without hearing his is that the job like title DevRel might be dead, but the job DevRel is not. And I just think more people are going to have within a company are going to have to be contributing to the content and the DevRel experience, which, probably is a good thing because we were talking about dog fooding earlier. You have people that are actually building the application that are like dog fooding and think like in the trenches being able to talk about stuff. And so I think you'll have people that are a little bit more experienced on the platform because they've actually written the code. And that's no shade to
Yeah.
people that are on the platform. Like I don't write Redwood framework code. So it takes a different level of me communicating with the rest of the team to figure out what they've implemented.
Yeah, and I think it's probably smart that the DevRel role is changing because when you take a role like developer relations or developer advocacy and you stick it under marketing or sales, they're just in the crosshairs all the
Mhm.
time for
Yep.
getting laid off or fired. And that's a very important role.
Yep.
And so, like you said, maybe if it changes more towards engineering or
Mhm.
or it's just something expected by engineers, that's going to be a good thing because those folks are going to be around. They're going to have really good product knowledge and code knowledge. They'll be able to explain it to other folks, and then they're not just going to get laid off on a whim when sales are down or when the economy's down.
Mhm.
And it probably also breeds like a more social engineer, a more social software developer. We don't just sit in our holes and uh, build our applications, but we're out there using them, showing them to people, listening to people. That's like a really good spot for an engineer to be in to receive all that feedback.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and I think, part of DevRel is that back and forth that allows people to hear from their customers. So you can't cut that out entirely. If you do, you're not going to have a
Yeah.
well-made product. It's going to be made with these blinders on. The other side of it is you also have, like I mentioned, people that are building the framework versus people that are building on top of it. You need the people building on top to give you that feedback back. That's one of the things that I've come to realize with Redwood is it's constantly like, please file issues. Like that's a good thing because we're not going to get that feedback and know what's wrong unless people tell us. And as much testing as we can do, we can't catch every single edge case. So you need that back and forth. It really is two-way street. It is about the community that you're creating.
So let's talk about other things that we feel like we're missing out on. So it's all these conferences. I guess we're going to be missing out on developer relations here in the future. Any like technologies or things that you're feeling like are passing you by right now?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think maybe okay, so there's two things that I'm curious about right now. And most of it revolves around the back end stuff. Like I'm curious about which I don't even know if it's still hot anymore. TRPC, where you're talking about having types on your front end and your back end and just trying to make it easy. Um, like I'm kind of curious about Drizzle. I don't know. I'm really happy with Prisma, but just kind of curious what the fuss is. But I this week I started thinking a little bit about Laravel. Don't judge. I know it's
Oh,
PHP.
okay. Me and you are like we're like in sync because one of the things I wrote down here was like all the different database options. I want to try them
Yeah.
all. I want to look at Drizzle. I want to try the Neon service. I want to try PlanetScale.
Neon's
I'm
good.
not I'm not really into like the Supabase situation. I think it does too much and I don't need all of that.
You can use it just as a Postgres database.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But it's expensive for a Postgres database.
Yeah.
That's the downside. So I was looking for
Okay.
like cheap hosted Postgres and then
Yeah.
I get to pick my ORM. Drizzle was a little sequely for me, even though
Mm.
they have the query builder now, which I still think Prisma does better. Prisma has rushed it for me for all of my use cases. I,
Yeah.
I only have very minor complaints about some of the type generation stuff. Otherwise, it's perfect.
Yeah. And their VS Code extension is beautiful.
Oh,
Also,
yeah.
it
What's the
hasn't
VS Code
been
extension?
well, just like their type.
The language
Yeah,
server.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which it hasn't been released yet because I did a little reordering of our podcasts, but you could probably dig through YouTube and find it. We did an interview with Mark Hess, who is
Yeah.
DevRel at Prisma, and so it's quite good. It's mostly Brad and I gushing over how much we love Prisma.
So good. And Mark is awesome. He like reached out and said, "Hey, does Atlassian want a private Slack channel with Prisma?" I was like, "Yeah," and so I've
Yes, me
been
too.
asking them direct questions. It's
That's awesome.
really great. Um, yeah. So databases, I feel like some of the database options are just passing me by,
Mhm.
and I just luckily like where and how you host your database isn't such a big deal as long as it's the same type that you're expecting. So for every new project, pick a new one and try it out.
So let's pause for a second because this is kind of a curious topic for me. What are you looking for in a backend service? It's a database because it's like at the end of the day, you're just storing data. What do you need it to do?
The one thing that I think would be really awesome is branching. I think branching
Oh, well,
really
and Superbase
makes
replace
setting up
that.
those environments.
Yeah,
Super-based release branching? Yeah. And
yeah,
Neon
which is
always had
very
it,
much.
and
Mhm,
PlanetScale had it, but yeah, specifically, I'm looking for Postgres with branching that has a great free tier that doesn't go to sleep or whatever.
mhm.
So Neon, I
That's
think, is the best option until they made those pricing changes, but they're
yeah.
still the best option.
So Superbase had a big launch week last week, and so they made branching generally available. Actually, I just wrote a ginormous blog post. It's the longest blog post I've ever
I
written in my
I saw
entire
that and I
life.
just scrolled for days.
Use the table of contents.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, I probably should have broken up into multiple posts, but instead I was like, I'm gonna just dump everything that I had to work through with a remix and a Supabase project. So it mostly focuses on the auth piece of it, but there's some interesting situations when you're talking about storage because Supabase does provide that. And they also provide like you can make these really complex queries within Supabase that's pretty cool. And then you can also create custom functions, which is really a Postgres feature, but they leverage that. So there are certain things that it was like, yes, you can query that, but then you have to put the computation responsibility on the server or the client. But it's better if it can sit closer to the data and just let the database do it, especially when you have these Postgres functions built in. So, anyways, I made a few of those. So, anyways, in the post, I
Mm.
document what those are and how all that works. So it's 8,000, almost 9,000 words. It is ginormous, but just bookmark it. And if you ever do a project in Supabase, you can refer to it.
Yeah, it's that kind of level of detail that I've never really gotten to in a database. Like the functions or things like
Yep.
that, like integrating directly with Postgres.
Yep.
Never been there. Actually, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
Was working with the date type in Postgres recently in
I
Prisma
saw
in
your tweet
Postgres,
about
right?
that.
Because Prisma uses the date type, but then I think it translates it to something special in Postgres. I'm not sure exactly if it's a one-to-one, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, when you query something out of Postgres with Prisma that's a date, you get a JavaScript date, which like is good.
Hmm.
But then you send it over the wire and it gets serialized and it lands on the front end as a string. And so
Hmm.
now I want to use my Prisma types through, the auto-generated types throughout my app, and it thinks this thing is a date object. Where in reality, when the front end gets it, after you use loader data and load it into your Remix app, it's a string.
Hmm.
So I'm sitting here going, well, do I duplicate all the types? Do I always make that transform everywhere I use this thing to bring it back to a date? I'm like, this seems like a headache. What if I just stored a string? What am I missing out on? And so, have you ever run into situations like this where, your back end types aren't matching with your front end types, but you don't want to like hand write everything and duplicate it?
Yeah. The biggest one I have is if you're, say, working with a router and you're grabbing a
Mm-hmm.
like /1 for the ID.
Uh-huh.
Is that a number? Is that a string? And a lot of times it's saved as like say an integer in your database, but if you're passing it back and forth, like with GraphQL, you've got to switch it back. And so
Yep.
it feels a little smelly sometimes. I did see your tweet about the date thing, and I really did like Brian Morrison's response. So Brian used to work at PlanetScale, and he suggested leaving everything in dates just for being able to sort and process that, which I don't know how that would work on the server if everything was a string and you want to sort or filter based on the date.
If they were epoch timestamps, it's all filterable, but I don't think you could do any more advanced sorting than that.
Okay.
So I guess now I need some kind of like layer that translates it from A to B. And now I made this new crazy type that just like omits the date property and then re-sticks it back in with like a ampersand, his
Yeah, it's
bait
so
string.
I hate
I'm
time
like,
in general.
oh, like this seems painful. I just
The
wanted to use the prismatypes everywhere.
so okay, here is another episode that's coming out, but again, you can probably, if you wanna cheat, find it on YouTube. But James and I talked about a multi-part form and all the nuances of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and he had tweeted about it, and somebody posted on there, "I don't understand what the big deal is, just do this." And that response bugged me so much, like far more than it really should have. It just got under my skin, and I'm not gonna throw hate or shade on online, but I just want to say you just showed that you're a junior. Like you just showed your hand. It's never
Yeah.
that simple. We
Yeah.
have 30-minute section of the podcast where we talk about all the nuances and all
Yeah.
the business cases. And so it's one of those things that you find out as a senior, the answer is more and more it depends.
It's one of those things where it's like, oh, you think making a button in a design system is easy? Have you ever tried it?
I know.
Have you ever accounted for everything you
Oh
actually
my
need to
goodness.
account for? And then people who dismiss that is like, sure, you might be able to get by, but what you're building is not a complete solution. And when you
Yeah.
realize the complexity and nuance in things, be able to have these conversations, that's when you're at a level where you're truly thinking about everything that's going on and not just the happy path.
Right. So we had mentioned Michael Chan earlier and a talk that he gave for Storybook. And part of that talk is actually looking at a button component. You have a single button component, but when you take everything into consideration,
Yep.
like in Figma, that can actually amount to 1,143 different variations by the time
Hmm.
you count disabled states, small, medium, large. Is it an icon button, a text button? I mean, there's so many different things to consider with just a single button, and that people take all that stuff for granted.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Another thing I'm for sure missing out on is RSCs. It's like the new Next.js app router and RSCs are just flying right by me because I'm just in this mode right now where my tool set is enough and
Mhm.
I don't want to mess with it. And it just
Yeah,
seems simple and easy to work with and close to the platform, you know? And so
right.
I'm just like, I don't need another new layer of complexity
Yeah,
because I also really love testing everything. And I don't even
sure.
want to think about what RSCs will do
Right.
for unit tests. It's going to wreck it all somehow.
Yeah.
So,
There are pieces of it that are really nice, like, when you start thinking about what libraries can do with their
hmm
components that they're shipping, so they
yeah,
can create these really tight integrations with their services to query for
yes,
data directly within their components, and then you just use the component. You just drop it in your project and it works. So, there's some potential there that it's unlocking that's really interesting, but I
yeah,
totally understand what you're saying in terms of increasing the complexity. One of the things
yeah,
that I don't quite have my head wrapped around yet. And I believe we have a post on the Redwood website about it, but talking about the flight path of data, that's been in the hot topic in a lot of the meetings that I've been
yeah,
in because you can have the first paint from the server and then you can have client components, but then you're with streaming, you're hydrating your page in a specific order
yeah,
in order to go back and forth. And that stuff just gets so confusing to me.
yeah. It's rough. Yeah, so I'm kinda just letting the water settle, enjoying the tool sets that I'm working with, and just being happily, ignorant, you know,
Okay.
as they mature, as they, get stable and steady.
So we started off talking about FOMO. This is why I said Laravel, because this
Oh, yeah,
week I
that's
thought maybe maybe we had it right. 20 years ago with Laravel and PHP, because it's like they can kind of, yes, you can use React in a Laravel project, but you can kind of step back a little bit from all that, right? Because you're sending the data from PHP, from the server, all that stuff is just like tightly integrated. And it just feels like, wow, you can kind of avoid all this JavaScript drama. That's
yeah,
kind of
or look,
enticing.
at the end of the day, just make your API with Laravel and then
Yeah.
integrate it into any front end that you want. You don't even have to try to
Yeah.
jam React inside of the Laravel application. Just make it
Mhm.
separate, you know?
Or
Yeah,
I'm kind of curious what their Alpine Livewire thing is. Like, I want to
yeah,
know
that too.
exactly what that's about.
Like, how interactive do your apps really need to be? At the end of
Yes.
the day, if you're just hot swapping some stuff, okay, use that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, every time I think about this, I think about Chris Sev and now
Yeah.
Kapehe, who is just like, yo, I learned Laravel over the weekend and it was awesome. Like
Yeah.
the fact that you can type in a couple commands to your CLI and you've got like boom, full auth server and database
Yeah.
models, and it just just does it all. And it
Yes.
seems magic in a good way.
Well, and I think this is kind of what got me going on about it is when you do PHP, you have to really start thinking about the server. And I managed servers for years with WordPress sites, and I did experiment with Laravel probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. So, or maybe just 10 years ago. So I know it's changed a lot, but you're dealing with the server at that point and trying to manage all these configurations. Well, now that you're talking about RSC and SSR, we're
Yeah.
having to go back to the server.
Yeah.
And I know that serverless has its own set of complications and frustrations, but I do love that I can just connect my Vercel account to my GitHub repo, say, here's my project, and then it just runs. And so
Yeah.
it's like with RSC and SSR, and I'm sure Vercel will get there. I mean, they kind of already are with Next, but just, dealing with other frameworks moving into that space. If I'm going to have to set up my own server and manage all that stuff again, part of me is like, well, why not look at Laravel or PHP again? I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
Well, okay, I've got one more for FOMO too.
okay.
And this is something I'm gonna change very, very soon. All the Cloudflare stuff is just calling my
Oh, yeah.
name. Like, it's fast, it's
Yes.
distributed, it's on the edge. They've got SQLite on the edge, which SQLite provides an amazing local developer experience and a really fast production experience as well.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, I have got to jump on this train. I just feel like it's a great way to make SSR apps really fast.
Yep, and we had James Perkins on the podcast, and he was talking about how Cloudflare has been an essential part of their stack and how cheap it is.
Yeah.
So, I'd be curious what their numbers are. I didn't ask, but
It's he's the well, I'm speculating, but I the way he was talking about it, it was like dollars, not hundreds of dollars, like dollars.
it's so crazy.
But the thing about Cloudflare is I feel like they're good for like little things like, oh, database here, a single worker here. Like they're very small, granular tools.
Mhm.
But then when you try to put things together, like for instance, bringing a remix app over to Cloudflare, or like using their stuff in a broader sense, that integration story isn't as fleshed out as it could be. And so
Mm.
this is where I'm trying to partner with Cloudflare to be like, can I make some videos about getting remix onto there? Can we work together
Yeah.
to like improve these integration stories so that way Cloudflare gets to be as cheap as it is,
Mhm.
but has that really nice happy path like Vercel where it's like clicky clicky, everything goes through and things
Yeah.
deployed.
Clicky, clicky.
Yeah.
I'm here for all the clicky, clickies. Speaking of clicky, clickies, so I worked on an automation last night using AI, so I can just do a little clicky, clicky, and it handles all these tasks that we have to do for podcasts and production work. So um, I'm not going to go into all the nitty gritty details of what it takes to produce a podcast, but it is quite a few more steps than somebody might imagine. Just trying to generate chapter marks and social clips and figure out what the best title is for marketing and create tweets. I mean, all the things. So, one of the things I've been doing is I've been leveraging ChatGPT to help create a lot of that. So we edit the podcast in Descript, and then from Descript, I can export a transcript. So we haven't done anything with these yet, but we have a transcript for every single episode of the podcast, which is great. Those are already generated. We're just sitting on them. But I've been taking that transcript and sticking it into ChatGPT. So if you are a paid subscriber, you can upload files. So I upload the transcript and then I just ask ChatGPT to run all these tasks. Well, I've been asking all these like the same tasks every single time. And it just kind of gets a little redundant. And I just thought, I wonder if there's a way that you can automate this. Like I just give ChatGPT the file and it gives me all the information that I want. Boom. And so last night I decided, okay, I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna create my own custom chat GPT. And so if you are a paid subscriber, you have access to create your own custom GPT. And I was blown away by how easy it is. Like, it's ridiculous. I think if people knew how easy it was, more people would do it. So if you are logged into ChatGPT, on the left side in the bottom left, you'll have your account information. If you click on that, you can go to, I think it's like my GPTs. Let me just pull this up really quick, make sure I'm giving the right instructions here. Okay, so I'm going to click on my name, and then there's an option there in the menu for my GPT. So if you click on that, it'll list all the custom GPTs that you've created. If you haven't created any, at the very top, or even if you have, at the very top, it says create a GPT. So if you click on that, then it'll pull up a window with two panes on it. On the left is a chat window. Well, and technically on the right is also a chat window. But on the left, it'll start asking you prompts. So it'll say, hey, what are you trying to do? I'm here to help. And so you build your GPT by just having a conversation with it and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I have a podcast that I want to give you a transcript, and I want you to run a bunch of tasks on it. And then it'll say, okay, great. What tasks do you want it to run? And then I just start describing all the tasks almost as if I just uploaded the file and was asking for that information. And if you want to refine any of those queries, you can always log back in and say, hey, you didn't quite do this right. Will you do this? One of the things I had to keep telling it to do was whenever I would test it, it would just run the last task that I sent it. And I wanted it to do like 10 tasks as soon as I give it the transcript. So I would just say, hey, you only did the last task. I want you to do everything. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm updating now. So on the right side, because I mentioned there's two panels, on the right side is like your test window. So on that side, I can drop the transcript in, and then it'll run all the tasks so that you can test the GPT that you're building right there in the same interface. The cool part is I created a public link and just shared it with the rest of the Compressed team. So people want to experiment with it, or if they ever want to do the production work on the podcast, I can also share it with our editor, and they can go from there. But it just saves a ton of time and a ton of work. It gives us a good starting point.
Yeah, I've got to look into this. So, like, is this similar to the system messages that you can like pre-prompt a GPT with? Meaning, like, I've seen examples where it's like, you are a tax expert, and I'm going to ask you questions about my tax return this year. And then, like, with that context, then you ask it questions in the next window, and it only answers based on like the personality kind of that you assigned it.
Yeah, I think you can tell it all those things. You can also go into settings, which I didn't fine tune too much, but you can also, like, within a text field, say these are the actions that I want it to run. I'm sure you could say, hey, I'm a tax person. I want you to ask me these following questions every single time.
Oh, okay. So it's
And
almost
it would
like
do that.
making like an automated robot that'll go through like a process or something that then anybody can provide input and it'll do it.
Well, I think and I think it's good for anybody that you're going to ChatGPT and you're asking it, running it through the same prompts every time. Just turn that into a
Okay.
GPT and it'll ask you. You can also store context in there. So I can understand why certain people that have built AI companies that are almost wrappers around open AI are concerned about these custom GPTs, because at that point, you're like, well, why use your service when I can just create a custom GPT that will do the same thing? And I think that really what it shows is that what separates one AI company from the next is that language model that they're training all their data on. So
Yeah.
if you're wrapping your company around open AI, you're using the same language model as if somebody's just going to chat GPT. Now, if you have a custom set of data that you're able to feed it, then that makes your use case more competitive, because the next person won't have that set of data to work with.
This is so cool. To talk about something that's also just passing me by. I need to get more into this situation. Um,
One of the things that I'm interested in is really the prompt engineering side of it. I haven't done research. I've just been collecting articles, and I'm happy to share a few of them. But the idea that you can really refine your prompts. So we mentioned Chris Sev earlier. He was talking about how he's using AI with video tap. So video tap, you can point a YouTube video to video tap, and it'll create all these assets. So kind of a similar setup, except it's using a video. But he was talking about how he's been able to really refine the output and really enhance what it gives back because of the prompts. So I guess maybe I should tack that on. I was saying, oh, maybe the data that you're feeding it makes it interesting, but also just how you're able to refine your prompts. Like it seems like that might be where a lot of IP is in the future is I have this refined set of prompts that I can feed it to get a more refined answer back. Because I don't some of their stuff with like tweets or it's just like that's not how I would talk. So
Mm.
trying to teach chat GPT, like do it in this style, in this language is I haven't quite figured all that stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just linked so going back to Cloudflare Workers now has these integrations with AI models. And so you can like one-click deploy like kind of like a chat bot to Workers. And so I just linked in chat a playground for AI workers that's using you can use all the beta ones for free. So the new Llama 3 that just came out for Meta is free right now because it's in beta. And so it's got the same notion of like you're either talking as a user or as the assistant.
Mhm.
And you can tell like again, give the assistant instructions or personality or whatnot. So
Yeah.
also worth playing around with here.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that the custom GPT asked me, like, "What tone do you want me to take?" And I was like, "Casual and friendly." That just feels really generic, where it's like, "I want you to
Yeah.
sound like me."
Yeah. I
So
wonder okay, so, like, at the end of the day, you just uploaded a bunch of files to the like, all of our transcripts to the assistant to give it, like, a background or
Oh, I didn't give it any context other than, "Hey, this is a
Ah,
technical podcast that's about web design and development." So it's very generic in that sense. And the only file that I sent it was just the final transcript when I was testing it. That
okay.
everything else is just very task oriented. I'm sure that eventually we could maybe refine that and, continue to tweak the prompts and things like that. That was kinda cool because I was like, "Can I come back?" And it was like, "Of course, you can edit it anytime."
So and I'm assuming then this differs from language models that are trained on just a particular set of
Right,
information. Like, for instance, if we gave it all the podcast to the entire
right,
show and say, "Hey, given this set of information, can we ask you questions about it?" Right?
right.
That's
Create
that's making
tweets
your
that sound
own
like we wrote it. Like, that would be awesome. Because
yeah,
right
like,
now
that's
it's
making your
like
own language model, right? Like,
right,
so this is you're leveraging ChatGPT's model already, but you're just prescribing it a personality and a workflow and
that's
then
right,
going from there. Okay. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, I gotta get in on this stuff. I gotta get in on
Yeah.
this stuff. It could be really cool. I think I saw Tejas do this where he like kind of did that for his website and
Mhm.
his talks and stuff. And he just like fed it that information. And now you can just use an AI bot on his website to like ask questions and it'll answer as him
Yep.
essentially.
Yep. Well, and it would be interesting too that we have almost 200 recorded episodes to be able to send it all that and say, okay, this is quite a bit of web design and development expertise. Let's just ask it questions and at least
Yeah.
see how accurate they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
A lot of stuff going
interesting.
on there.
Yeah. Awesome. Anthony is in the chat and he's saying he has a tool for this. So I'm curious to hear more. But we
Link.
can, yeah, we can
Yeah.
keep moving forward. So one of our most popular episodes ever. This may have been the very first time you were on the show,
I think
Brad,
so.
was, I'll see if I can find the episode number, but was an episode all about productivity and the setup that you use as a developer. And so I'll include a link to that particular episode. But I'm curious how much your workflow has changed, what things you've doubled down on, especially because I don't even think ChatGPT existed when we recorded that episode. So it'd be interesting to see how things are now, 2024.
Oi. I relied heavily on like VS Code snippets and Plop for code generation.
Copilot, did that even exist?
Copilot didn't exist at the time. But the thing is, I still prefer my Plop stuff, although the transition from 3 to 4 kind of blew it out of the water. There's like a bunch of I'm having trouble getting things to play nicely together.
Really?
So for the most part, yeah, I'm just using Copilot in a lot of places. And I'm not really like, prompting it with comments or anything like that. It just knows what I'm working on and I can move pretty dang quick. But for scaffolding applications, I still use like GitHub template repos. I don't do anything non-deterministic in that sense because I know exactly what I want and I can program it out. Um, but yeah, I think it's mostly Copilot. ChatGPT, I barely use. I use it for kind of generating ideas. Like, hey, I'm making this app that does this. Give me some cool names or like creative things that I kind of suck at. But other than that, not too much has changed.
That's funny. So I've experimented with a few things lately. I picked this a few weeks ago in our picks and plug section, but I recently listened to Slow Productivity, and
Hmm.
I think I picked Cal Newport's podcast called Deep Questions. I'll
Yeah.
include links to both of those. But what's fun about Cal is that he is a computer science professor at Georgetown. And so it's like, oh, you're my people. You do the same type of work that I do. Granted, he's more in the education side, but the way that he thinks is very similar to how I think because he's a programmer, developer. And one of the things that he really talks about is trying to find things that you want to be productive with over time. A lot of times it's easy to look at the end of the day and say, okay, did I answer all my Slack messages? Am I at inbox zero? How many meetings did I go to? And
Yeah.
using those things to define how productive I was during that day.
Yeah.
But the problem is that's almost pseudo productivity, right? Because
Yep.
a lot of those things you're adding more tasks to your to-do list. You're not making progress on your overall projects. I mean, you might go to a meeting and get information that you need, but you weren't able to actively contribute to that project. And so he talks about the importance of deciding what do I want to contribute to over time. And I thought a lot about that with some of my goals because I have goals on like I want to be more active in blogging and YouTubing and live streaming and doing social media and building SaaS applications and all these things. But at the end of the day, what is going to give me the most leverage in my career overall, the long haul? What do I want to be remembered for? But I don't know, I just started asking myself the other day, what is the least amount of work that I could do? Not in the sense of I want to be lazy, but if it's like if I want to show up in all of these places, what is the minimum that somebody expects me to show up? And so that I can still make movement without burning myself out.
This is a really good point because I watched some like Instagram reel the other day where somebody was saying smart people aren't as successful as you think they are. Smart people get in their own way. They overcomplicate things. Uh,
Mm,
people who tend to make a lot of money are kind of lazy. They see a problem and they think, what is the least amount of effort I can do to solve this problem?
mm,
And then charge people for it,
yeah.
essentially. And it comes down to like, make your MVPs, do the least amount of work to move forward in whatever goal you have or produce whatever app that you want to make. Don't solve for the entire world on
Mhm.
day one. And so it's just about restricting essentially the amount of effort you put into things.
Yeah, when I was at the Redwood JS conference, one of the things that I sat in on was the founders workshop. And there were a few founders in there that were like, well, I'm still building out all these features. Bam, 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 bam. And they made a list of all of them. And the question came up, excuse me, why do you have to build out all these features? And it was like, well, our competitors, they do that. Or I'm trying to aggregate a bunch of tools that the industry uses so that we're the one tool. But the thing is, if you think about it, a lot of times you use a specific application because some cases it just does one
Does
task
one thing.
really
Yeah.
well. And that's what sets it apart. It's not the fact that
Yeah.
it necessarily does everything suboptimally. Like I would rather pay for a couple of different tools that do that one task really well. And so you have to come up with other ways that are going to give you that competitive advantage.
Here's how I try to break all this down. I first and foremost, I write my goals for the year on my blog and I keep them there. And I try to keep them really realistic. My goals aren't about necessarily like I need to build X amount of SaaS applications or do such and such. They're more like steering the ship. Like, hey, I want to very slowly grow the amount of side income that I'm making each year. And I can do it in a number of ways, but like as long as that number goes up, I don't really care, right? I'm still making progress. So that's how I kind of steer my ship is my big goals posts. And then I try to like say, okay, in each of these categories, in each of these sections, let's pick one thing to focus on right now. And I should always have one thing to be focusing on
Mhm.
that'll move that forward. Um, like right now I'm making some videos for Cloudinary. And so that's what my focus is on, building those out and working with that company. And that'll increase my side income goal. But the goal isn't to make Cloudinary videos, the goal is to increase side income. So you always have to keep the big picture in mind throughout the whole time. But I also am really crappy about like taking time off or just stepping away and disconnecting because when I'm going hard on goals, I'm always like working at night where I could just be like taking a brain break. So I wrote down in my goals things like these are 3 video games I want to play this year. These are 3 books that I want to read this year. So I'm still relaxing, taking breaks, recharging myself for the next day of like focus and hard work while still making progress on like goals, things that I want to accomplish.
Yeah, that was one of the things that Cal Newport talks about is just those seasons of intensity, and then
Yeah.
also it's okay to have seasons of rest.
Yeah.
And for some of us, our work naturally lends that way anyways. You might be more lean on the summer and then pick up in the fall, and that's okay, but you need that time to relax, and that's actually really healthy for your brain and creativity and things like that. So, he encourages you to have generally 3 buckets and not all related to work, and was just saying that a lot of times people struggle with email, and it's not because you're not productive, you're not like, you're unresponsive. It's just because the email is not the problem, it's a symptom of the problem and the fact that
Yeah.
you've signed up for too many projects. It's like
Yeah.
if you, like, reduce the amount of projects you have, then you reduce the overhead and you reduce the number of emails, and at that point, all your generic productivity inbox 0 email processing rules apply, and you can manage that, which I felt was really encouraging for me that, okay, email is not the problem. This is the problem. And like trying to be more intentional about what I say yes to, which is not something that I'm good at, but really trying to think, okay, what are those projects? If I only have 3 things I can commit to, what are those things?
I try to bring it down to 1. Like
Which is even better.
I'm already like in over my head, quote unquote, because like I'm in a couple talks right now with some companies, and then like I wanted to make this YouTube video, and here I am getting nothing done because I'm like I can't do all 3, and I need to
Mhm.
just drop it all, pick the one thing, and do that. And sure, the to do list always has stuff on it for like family and home and just
Right.
things that need to get done. Like I just need to only have one project. And I used to have this to do item every day that just says, make progress on your goals. Did I do literally anything to move that forward? And I would say that's a successful day at the end of the day. So singular focus, move your overall goals forward. How do you do that? Pick one thing to do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, have you heard of the burner theory?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so this is like if you have, I say 4 burners theory, where you're on a stove and you have 4 burners in front of you. One is family, one is friends, one is work, and one is health. And I guess professional chefs do this, I don't know. But the idea is that where you're actively cooking is on the front 2 burners. And the thing is you can only have 2 things that are in front of you that you're doing really well at a time. And so I think about that sometimes when I'm like, okay, I have a lot of emphasis right now with family and work. And I feel that like friends and things outside of work, not so much, or even health stuff. Like I would love to get back into running. I know you just completed a half marathon,
Ooh.
like that kind of thing. Yeah. But those are on the back burner. And so it's like, okay, if I'm going to shift, like say that health and exercise piece forward, what gets put to the back burner? What are those things that you're focusing on and how do you move those around? And I think it's okay for that to be seasonal, but again, just to be intentional about those decisions that you're making.
I would argue that there's a fifth burner. And it's this burner for me, this fifth burner that always, always, always gets deprioritized. So work is one thing. Work is
Mhm.
your day job that you do to pay the bills. But then there's I would say side projects, side income.
Mm.
That's extra. And I can't I can let go of friends a little bit, but I cannot let go of health because I just feel better to sit down and do
Mhm.
everything I need to do. Can't let go of family. You can't
Right.
let go of work. Like those 3 things are 100% musts for me. And so I constantly not drop friends, but just like less frequently speak to folks, which is it's
Yep.
been a goal in the past of mine. Make sure to see people once a month, do X, Y, and Z. But that side project one is always the least important.
Would
And
you put that in work though? Because like, what's your end goal in that?
I wouldn't put it in work. Just it's just extra side
Or
money.
fun? There's not a fun one
It's
there.
almost considered fun, sure, but it is like bringing in income. It lives in a weird place because in our careers, doing things outside of 9 to 5 is super beneficial for learning, staying on top of things, but it's also like lucrative monetarily. So it's a good habit to have. But yeah, that's the one that always drops for me where it's like, okay, side projects are too much. I'm just going to take it off my plate.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, some of it could be I I don't know, I haven't dug too deep into this theory, but if it's like non-compartmentalized time. So like if
Yeah.
you're saying 9 to 5, I'm gonna keep my job at this size and this is all the amount that it's allowed to fill. Or uh, family, I'm just thinking about my kids. They can only fill the 4 to 8:30 chunk
Yeah.
of time
Yeah.
because they're gonna go to bed. And so then it's like, okay, what are you doing before they wake up and after they go to bed? Like that stuff, that's the time that I feel like I only have one thing that I can commit to, or I can do really well during that time.
That so well, okay. We're going into life stuff here. My 9 to 5 time has been being taken over a little bit by puppy. Gotta
Oh,
train
sure.
puppy, gotta give Gabby space to go out and do what she needs to do. Puppy is entering into that time. And then it's after the kids go to bed, which is where I have to fit in fitness.
Mhm.
And then side projects have to go in somewhere, and you still have to make time for like time together with your
Right.
spouse. And so that's why the side projects are the last thing. They just
Yeah.
fall off.
Well, and that's when people say this is kind of interesting too when you start talking about time. Everybody has 24 hours. You all like we're all limited, but that's not really true because different people have different obligations
Oh
for
yeah.
those 24 hours. If you're
Oh yeah.
talking about somebody that owns a lifestyle business that they don't have the 9 to 5, they have more hours than you do. Or, somebody Henry's health stuff, my husband, he has to get more sleep than I do. I will, slip on my sleep a little bit more, which isn't healthy, not recommended, but like physically he has to have more sleep than I do.
Mm.
And so he has less of those 24 hours than I do. And so I think some of it is also just understanding what you need as a person, is sometimes a little bit different.
And some of it is just being okay with the restrictions placed in front of you. Like you're like,
Mhm.
what I'm doing is what I'm meant to be doing right now. If I don't have a ton of extra time, well, that's because this is a season of life and you go
Mhm.
through that.
Yep.
And this isn't a season of life with that might last for 2 or 3 months. Like this season of early childhood and having children and
Mhm.
stuff is a long season. And so you kind of have to realize, even though it's in your core earning years, probably as an adult, you're not necessarily going to go like make the next gigantic side project because you are very restricted. Now, there's a lot of ways to like swizzle those hours. Do you stick an hour of side project in the middle of work? You know, do you try to wake up earlier and just sacrifice sleep for a while? What do you do? But at the end of the day, you just have to be okay with where you are on the whole and prioritize the most important things first.
Well, and I think that's why I like how Newport's idea is slow productivity because, you
Hmm.
said, "Oh, you might not have the next side project." I think
Hmm.
you could, but you just have to be okay with, "I'm only gonna put in
A little
30
bit.
minutes or an hour every day." But, over the course of a year, that's 365 hours
Yeah.
towards a side project, and that's a significant amount of time. And I
Yeah.
think
And
that's kind of where, that's kind of where I struggle is I feel like I have to go all in on something. "Oh, I'm gonna vlog, I'm gonna do it every day." Or, "I'm gonna live stream, I'm gonna do it every day. Oh, I'm
yeah.
gonna blog, I'm gonna do it every day." And it's just not maintainable, and it's gonna burn you out. And so trying to figure out, okay, what's the least, in those cases, was the least amount that I can do and still make progress.
And that's why I loved my to-do item that says make any progress. It
Mm,
doesn't matter how big or small. Because the 10 minutes that you're like, I'm just going to scaffold out this project and then walk away, it always turns into more. Because if you never sit down to do it in the first place,
yep.
because you're like, it's too late, or I don't have the energy to do like a bunch of tasks, nothing gets done. But if you say, I will only do this one thing that'll take 5 minutes, next thing you know, you're sitting there for an hour and you're chugging away. And like all of a sudden you found the motivation in doing, which I think that's
Mhm.
another like Cal Newport quote. It's like
Yep.
motivation comes from the act of getting things done.
Yep. So I have a pick that plays really well into this. So
Okay.
if
Okay.
you're good,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm ready.
I'll transition to the next section of the show where we pick something that we like and we plug something generally that we've worked on. So I'm going to pick, I may have picked this before, so I'll put a spin on it. A book called Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. But he talks about this
Mm.
exact thing that we're talking about. He talks about just getting started on something, but he also talks about gamifying. So Ali Abdaal has his own YouTube channel. He was a doctor. Now he's a YouTuber full time. The thing that I like about his spin on productivity is he brings a sense of psychology and science to it that you don't always see with productivity books, where it's just like, do this or hustle hard or whatever that is. But he talks about how can you make it fun and how can you make these things maintainable. So with the procrastination, for example, I've been guilty of this in a lot of projects. And one of the ways that he says to get over it is just to do a better, there's different reasons people procrastinate. And so if you can put your finger on why it is that you're procrastinating, a lot of times it's, I just don't know what the next step is. And I don't know how to work
Oh,
through it.
yeah.
And so if you can break down the project, just get over that next step, it makes it a
Yeah.
whole lot easier. One of the things that I found with my side projects when I'm trying to plan them out or make a list of all the to-do items is in my Notion template, I have a section called black hole items. And these are things that I kind of coined this term myself, but he references it too. So I don't want to say that I just came up with this idea. It's just how I refer to it in my own work. But they're the things, the tasks that take up a lot of space. They suck all the energy out of it because I don't know what it is. I don't know how to accomplish that. And so I found if I can name those things and then put an obvious next step, or if I spike on them and can figure them out, then I can slowly gain momentum for that project because those black hole things just start disappearing. But I will include a link to that. But this was my spin because, like I said, I can't remember if I picked this book before. There is a podcast interview with Ali Abdaal and Cal Newport that was really interesting.
Ooh.
They did like a podcast swap. So Cal Newport was on Ollie's podcast, what's his shoot? I can't, his deep question, or what is his? Give me a second.
I've never listened to either, and I need to.
His podcast, okay, deep dive. So you have deep questions and deep dive. But Ollie's podcast is very good. I'll cheat and add another episode that I really enjoyed with Ollie. But anyways, Cal Newport was on Ollie's podcast, Deep Dive, and then Ollie was on Deep Questions with Cal, and they're both really good and they interview each other. So check both of those out along with the book. So I said I was going to cheat. There's another episode that Ollie did with Jody Cook, and I have her book on my list. It's like called the 10-Year Career. But Jody created a business and then sold it. But she has like these really insightful ways of thinking about the work that you do and planning out your goals that I just really enjoyed and resonated with, and just gave me a lot of things to really think through and process. So I'll include a link to that one as well.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm making a laundry list of books I need to read
Sorry.
now.
Or just listen to. I
Yeah.
found that I can get through a lot more books if I just listen to them. And some of the dry books that I've started reading that I just slog through, I'm like, well, I'll just buy the audiobook. And then I can crank through some of the parts that are a little bit slower or harder to get through. For my plug, I'm going to plug the 2weekbuild.com. So I'm planning on running another cohort next month. So I would love for you to join me. The rules are simple. Just pick something that you want to build and build it in 2 weeks. So I think I'm hesitating right now because I think the registration form is broken if you look at the site. But check it out, 2weekbuild.com.
Yeah, that was such a cool idea, and it was right in the middle of spring break, and I signed up and made one update, so I
I
gotta try it again.
I built Dev with Figma. No, no, no. What is it? Figma for Devs.
Mhm.
Fi- Figmafordevs.com. I'll include a link to that. And the landing page is up. I did not do a responsive view, and the copy is not final. But I had somebody tweet about needing this content earlier in the week, and I was like, oh man, like I responded to their message and said, I've been working on this exact thing, and so I have renewed interest and motivation to finish this project because there's been demand for it.
Nice. Okay, let's see. For my picks and plugs, I was up in Arlington at my parents' house this weekend, and like my dad's LG TV wasn't working right to get like Apple streaming stuff to it. Like I was just trying to AirPlay to it, and it was like totally broken. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to the store, and I picked him up an Apple TV, and I love that thing because it's
Yeah.
so easy. Number one, it's easy to install, it's easy to set up, and then, like, even your parents can do it. Like, "Look, there's a physical remote, mom and dad. You just use this. When you press the button, your TV already turns on. You don't even need the other remote.
Yeah.
All your apps are here. Like, all your logins are already there." It's just so easy to get set up. Within, like, 5 minutes, we're set up. We were all looking at photos, sharing photos from stuff, screencasting whatever we were trying to do. So and I was like, "Hey, when you guys go on vacation, you don't have to, like, they were, like, hooking their laptop up via an HDMI cable to, like, a TV and all this
Yes.
stuff. I said, "Just bring the Apple TV. Now
That's
you
what
got
we
the
do.
remote. You can sit on the couch." So those are just, like, so perfect for the to replace the bad television operating system and just put it on a box, really good experience, can take it anywhere.
Yeah.
Apple TV.
We take ours to the beach, and for that exact reason, it just makes it so easy.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
the thing. They go to Cancun for a week or 2
Mhm.
every year, and that's exactly what they wanna do in the mornings or in the evenings when it's not good weather to be out of the pool.
Yeah, and it's so compact. The other thing that I really like is when the kids lose the remote, you
Yeah,
can pull up the remote
find
on your
it.
phone, and
Yes.
it makes it a lot easier than
Yeah, oh, yeah, you
trying
can
to
use the
scramble
phone
around.
as a remote. You can
Mhm.
also the remotes have Find My built in now, so you can, like, just point it
What?
at
Is that
it.
for the new ones?
The new ones, yeah.
Oh, wah,
Yeah.
wah. Well,
Super
maybe
good.
it's time.
And this ties in with all my productivity tools. They're just all the base Apple apps.
Yeah.
That's it. So
Do you use a lot of the notes stuff? I've seen a lot of people saying that they've moved all their tasks into notes now.
tasks into notes? No, I
Uh-huh.
still use reminders for that because I
Okay.
love the location triggers, the message
Mhm.
triggers, the repeating, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Notes, I'm doing more for like longer term reference stuff. Anytime I fix something at the house
Okay.
or replace something at the house, I've got a note on it. So like next time something happens with the dishwasher, I've got the
Mhm.
model, all the replacement parts, all the YouTube videos I watched,
That's
like
nice.
reference. Notion, I still use Notion a little bit for like the more complicated
Mhm.
notes and schedules and things that I have to keep maybe around projects. But other than that, everything goes into Apple Notes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm just gonna plug my YouTube channel. I've released a couple videos and I've got more coming. YouTube.com/Brad Garapy. I am trying to collaborate with Cloudinary, with Cloudflare, some other companies to try to get different types of content out there. And that'll be really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't have FOMO when I start jumping on and using all the Cloudflare stuff.
It's even better if you can get them to pay you for it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that will wrap up another episode. If you are listening on your podcatcher of choice, please do leave a rating and review. That helps other people find the show and also helps us get on phenomenal guests. So next week, James and I will be at Postman. So I'm sure that you will see stuff on social about that particular conference, but check it out. Postman, again, thanks to them for being a Compressed FN sponsor. And till then, that's all we got. Oh, I don't either. I just saw your private chat. I mean, I do.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just haven't logged in.
Okay, cool, yeah.
I'll figure that out for the
Y'all
future.
be at PostCon next week, so that's good.
Yep.
No recording
No
there.
recording next week. Yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out in the chat. Anthony, I can't wait to check out your stuff. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that seems helpful.
Yeah. And I
And I'm
I
a
love that
little
you
offended
sent
by
it.
the boomer tech comment, not gonna lie. Although I do not get a
Well,
lot of email. It's just
I don't either. Here's where mine gets backed up is because I have newsletters that I think, oh, I'll come back and read this, and I never do. If somebody sends me a message, I'm better about responding. But this is where I think emails get me, is I feel like I have to respond with, oh, happy Wednesday. Hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a good week. And it's like with Slack, I can just, yes,
barf
no.
it out there. Yeah.
Check out this link. This is what you need. And it's a lot easier to be succinct with the responses.
Yeah. Email's like mostly transactional for me. Unless you're dealing with like working things out with other companies. Like me and Colby have this huge thread, and I'm just like, email's the worst place for this, but I also feel like it's just a good paper trail for it.
Yeah.
But dang, there's got to be a better way
Well,
to do this.
and I've had a few instances lately where companies have added me like with that Slack Connect.
That's cool.
And well, the only thing is I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to pay for that at some point. That it's like Slack is, oh, you're on a free trial for now, but like in order to do Company Connect, you have to pay for their premium price in order to do that.
Wild. Or they can just invite to Notion or something like that. That could be kind of cool. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, email's just always there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's such an old technology too.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and we'll be back in a couple weeks.
See y'all.